Good afternoon. Howard Glaser, Director of State Operations. Going to be talking about cigarette tax enforcement this afternoon. I'm joined by Lieutenant Governor Duffy and State Tax Commissioner Tom Mattox. From the start of this administration, the governor has emphasized competence and performance by the state government as a way to rebuild public trust in the state government in Albany. Collecting taxes is a basic function of government. It's not the most pleasant function. It's not the one that gets the widest acclaim, but you can't run a government without it. It's also inherently unfair to taxpayers who play by the rules when others don't pay their fair share. New York State in the past has been frustrated in its attempts to collect tobacco taxes on sales of cigarettes. A recent court decision affirmed the right of the state to collect these taxes regardless of the status of the vendor. Since that decision, the state has moved decisively to enforce the law. State Department of Taxation and Finance, in conjunction with the state police and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms of the federal government, have mounted a very significant effort in recent weeks to identify and confiscate tobacco products that have been transported or sold without a tax stamp. His methods have included a variety of law enforcement procedures, including inspecting stamping agents, stopping vehicles, and seizing contraband and other investigatory and enforcement techniques. The results so far, as you can see on the charts, are very impressive. We've conducted over 350 retail inspections, seized almost 20,000 cartons of cigarettes, 24,000, almost 25,000 cigars, many pounds of tobacco, and most tellingly, sales of tax stamps went up 14% in June, from about 30.6 million to 35 million tax stamps. Today we're going to take an additional step with the signing of a memorandum of understanding between the State Tax Department and the state police in order to increase coordination and cooperation between those agencies. As the governor has stated many times, we act as one government, and we will continue to do so as we proceed with our enforcement efforts on all matters of tax enforcement. With that, let me introduce Commissioner Mattox.
Good afternoon. During my Senate confirmation hearings in March, I was asked the question with respect to the Department of Taxation and Finance's preparedness to enforce tobacco-related laws, assuming the Second Circuit Court of Appeals stay would be vacated, and how quickly the department would be able to take action. My answer at that time was immediately. After further adjudication, temporary restraining orders issued by the New York State Supreme Court, Appellate Division 4th Department, on June 9th and 10th of this year were vacated on June 21st, and a motion for a preliminary injunction pending appeal was denied. Within hours, the state's enforcement activities were initiated, and I'm pleased to direct your attention, as Director of State Operations, Glaser has just done, to the charts highlighting the range of activities and accomplishments state and local law enforcement have achieved without incident over the course of the last 21 days. There are three key factors that explain why the state was able to move quickly and aggressively. First, the governor's clear directive that the laws of New York State would be enforced. Secondly, the close level of cooperation and planning that occurred at many levels across the state among the Department of Taxation and Finance, New York State Police, the Attorney General's Office, district attorneys across the state, and local law enforcement agencies. In addition, the relationships that have been developed at the federal level with the ATF and with the U.S. attorneys ensured that all aspects of enforcement were appropriately reviewed and executed. Finally, the development of legislation and subsequent regulation detailing the prior approval and coupon system, focusing on tax collection at the point of distribution, in other words, the stamping agents, allowed the department to immediately collect taxes, excise and prepaid sales taxes at the wholesale level. When appropriate, Department of Taxation and Finance investigators conducted operations 7 days a week, focusing on inspections at retail outlets and stamping agent facilities and vehicles, surveillance, seizures, and the development of intelligence regarding the inter- and intra-state movement of tobacco products. It is our intention not only to continue our enforcement efforts, but to enhance our operations to ensure full and ongoing compliance with the tax laws of the state. Thank you.
Just to finish up, first of all, on behalf of Governor Cuomo, I want to express our appreciation both to Director of State Operations Howard Glaser, as well as Commissioner Mattox, Superintendent D'Amico, and their teams for the work they've done in the last 3 weeks. They've done extraordinary work. When the governor came into office, he had to bridge a $10 billion gap. His promise was to not raise taxes, but to make government work. And in essence, this enforcement activity is about getting back to the state revenues that are owed the state through untaxed and illegal cigarettes. These cigarettes come into New York State and hit our stores and our cities and streets from a variety of sources, not just any single source. But the work that's been done has been terrific to date. What it does do also, it levels the playing field for businesses around the state as well. Those who are put at a competitive disadvantage by the sale of these untaxed cigarettes, hopefully that level playing field gets even more level in the future. And what the governors want to do from day one is to make government work. There's been many promises about enforcing this statute over the years. I think this is the first time we've seen enforcement of this nature in a very, very short period of time. It is important that government does work, and the governor has been terrific in terms of he makes a promise, he keeps it. And in this case, a promise from day one to make this process work and to make sure, without raising new taxes, to try and get what the state is owed. So I think what you're seeing are some extraordinary numbers over the course of the first 3 weeks of this effort. One of the things we don't want to do is discuss our specific enforcement strategies. There's a variety of those. As I said, these come from a variety of sources. But again, it's a promise cap that was made when the governor first came into office. So again, appreciate the work that's been done. A lot of work will be done in the future, but in the first 3 weeks, I don't think the governor or any of us could ask for any more work than this team has done. So with that, just want to, first of all, any questions on topic for any one of us up here?
Is your policy toward Indian-made or Native American-made cigarettes that are made in New York State on reservation land? What's your tax policy toward that? Sure. We believe that the law supports our ability to collect taxes on any unstamped cigarettes in the state. That would include native branded cigarettes. Our current focus of the enforcement effort is on what's called premium branded cigarettes, the named manufacturers. What you see are the results of the early stages of that enforcement effort, which has been very fruitful. That will continue to be our focus for the time being. It's our first step. As the Lieutenant Governor said, we're not going to discuss specifics regarding our enforcement investigatory techniques. We believe that the law is clear that the native cigarettes are subject to taxation. Our focus currently is on the premium brands, which has been a very fruitful effort thus far.
Have any of these inspection procedures taken place on Indian territory?
No, none of our operations to date have occurred on the reservations.
Maybe to preemptively answer some questions, I think there's 2 questions on here. First of all, the governor and his administration respects the sovereign status of Native American nations. That's number one. And number two, as Howard Glaser just mentioned, in areas where there's a difference of opinion, they'll be resolved, but the state's position is very clear legally what it can and can't do. And any untaxed cigarettes sold to citizens off or outside of Native American territories, I think the law has been clear. But in areas where there is a difference of opinion, as there's clearly an opinion held, I'll speak for one, a Seneca Nation and President Rob Porter. Our hope is to be able to have fruitful discussion and resolve that, but the state's position has been very clear and definitive on that in terms of what its rights and responsibilities are.
Are there any ongoing negotiations with any tribes? Are there any current negotiations with tribes?
There are no negotiations per se, but we have reached out to each of the tribes at every step of our enforcement actions in terms of reminding the nations as to the rules and options available to them through the prior approval and coupon system. And we continue to rely on good communications, as the Lieutenant Governor stated, as part of our strategies.
I think that one point that needs to be made too, Governor Cuomo has a history of great relationships with Native American tribes when he was the HUD secretary. I mean, it is important, the respect that this administration has for the sovereign status that they have around the state, the value that they have in New York State. There is a difference of opinion on this, but we have followed the rule of the law. We've followed, certainly the law is very clear. But I want to reinforce, in areas that there is a clear difference of opinion, our hope is to resolve those quickly through communication at a table, not negotiate away or negotiate areas that we have a clear legal right to do. But I think we've had a very strong relationship. The governor wants that to continue, and I think any areas of differing opinions, I think we can work very hard to try and resolve those, and that's our goal.
So, have any of the cigarette inspections or the seized cartons come from other states?
It's a great question. I mentioned it earlier. There are a variety of points of origin for illegal, untaxed cigarettes. They come clearly from other states. Many of those states are in the southern part of our country. But I know Route 95, as some of the Native American leaders have mentioned, that is a route that is often used to transport these. So I think while we in New York State, and especially in western New York and the southern tier, focus on one particular source, there are a myriad of sources of these cigarettes. And the efforts that, again, Director Glaser and Commissioner Mattox are focusing on are all untaxed illegal cigarettes that rob the state of revenue and don't level the playing field.
But are they included in any of these figures?
Yes, the figures that we've presented here include cumulatively the result of all of our actions to date. This is where our partnership and close working relationships with state and other local law enforcement is particularly important. We've had conversations with District Attorney Vance and others as to what we can do to interdict the issues that the Lieutenant Governor just covered, and that is an important part of our enforcement strategy.
And can you clarify, I mean, is this an idea, are these independent retailers, bodegas, corner stores, or is this internet stuff coming into the state?
This is all of the above. As the Lieutenant Governor pointed out, our concern is all untaxed cigarette products presented for sale in the state.
Commissioner, the timetable with the sense that TRO is lifted?
Excuse me?
These numbers here, the sense that TRO is lifted?
Yes.
Yes, since June 21st.
And so how does this compare to a typical month period for tax and finance in terms of fees?
Well, as the Director pointed out, there has been a noticeable uptick in stamping agent activity. Clearly, there's some variability month to month. The agents manage their cash flow, they manage their inventories. There is some seasonality to that. But based on our intelligence on the ground and our surveillance activities, we're quite confident in making the statement that there clearly has been a diversion from unstamped to stamped product.
One more question. Is this more focused on the New York City area, or is this throughout the state?
But the activities are clearly statewide. Our mandate from the governor is to enforce the laws of the state, and that applies equally across all 62 counties.
Have you thought to be more aggressive about trying to intercept shipments from Indian reservations, setting up checkpoints or doing something of that nature?
Well, as we mentioned earlier, we're not going to talk about some of the specific techniques that we use, but what's reflected here is a very aggressive strategy that does just what you described.
Howard, have you communicated to any of the Native American tribes that for the time being, New York State is not going to be trying to seize Native-made cigarettes coming off reservations?
We have communicated that our legal right is to interdict any unstamped cigarettes, and that we retain the right to do that. Our focus is on premium branded, which, by the way, hasn't been done in 14 years. So what you see there reflected is really the first time since 1997 that there have been seizures of these products from these origins. That's our first focus, but we have the legal right to continue to enforce.
Is potential violence a concern?
Tom, if I could just answer that. First of all, I think we do have some very strong relationships we're working on. Spoke with, I mentioned, President Porter this morning, who I have great respect for, known him personally, and a very honorable leader. It is our hope that in areas where we differ, and clearly we're trying to articulate that very clearly, the state has a very clear sense of what its responsibilities are. In areas that we differ, our hope is to resolve those differences quickly, and certainly it is our expectation there will never be any violence. It'll be a matter of just trying to resolve these. The relationships are important. Again, on behalf of Governor Cuomo, we respect the sovereign status of these nations. It is something that is important. It is about respect and honor, but we have responsibilities. And the governor is very clear in terms of fulfilling his and the state's in terms of collecting what is legally appropriate. And I think one thing that's important in terms of on tribal lands, I don't think anyone goes on tribal lands to take any enforcement activity at all. I think there's a great respect for that. But our point is we don't discuss the specific enforcement strategies. I defer to the tax department and the state police to work on that. I think it's bad for us to signal what will and won't be done. But as Howard mentioned, the premium brands have been in focus on this right now, and any differences on the other brands, we will continue to work through.
Thank you. Off topic, real quick. Two things.
Yeah.
Pat, how are the negotiations going, as I understand? And the second one, Lieutenant Governor.
First one first, and I'll answer the second one.
You want to do PEF?
You do, Beth.
It's been our policy not to comment publicly on the status of negotiations, and we've rigorously adhered to that policy. I will say that we are in serious discussions and negotiations with PEF, and we appreciate the seriousness with which the bargaining unit has treated those discussions.
And number two, Lieutenant Governor, if you will, react real quickly to some of the criticism about the living situation with donations from.
The situation to talk about, it was reported last week. I clearly had to make a decision when I came. My home is in Rochester. By virtue of my job, I have to reside part of the time here in Albany. And I had a decision to make whether I use per diems, taxpayer money, to use that like I think every elected official, with the exception of the governor, uses here in Albany, or use funds, my private campaign funds. And I chose to use my campaign funds as I decide in terms of a more permanent situation down the road this year. And I did seek a decision on that from the State Board of Elections Enforcement before I did that, to make sure that I'm a rule player. I want to play by the rules and follow the law. But that was an option that I felt was better than using taxpayer money. That was a decision that I made.
Thank you. Governor, one question about what is your estimated goal as to how much money you can bring in through these taxes?
Well, we want to bring in as much as humanly possible. I defer to Commissioner Mattox or Director Glaser for a specific number, but I think that we have at least some sense of what we're missing out there every year.
We'll do a quick at that. We take in $1.6 billion in tobacco taxes. For this year, we estimated in the budget $27 million in increases due to this court decision, and the early numbers are very encouraging that we're going to actually meet that target.
That's it, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.